Hello, Herschel Mehta here of Mehta Ventures. We're early stage investors in startups across different sectors. Today, I'm happy to introduce John McCartney. He's a PR professional and works with various startups on PR. Today, we're going to be talking about what to expect when engaging somebody in PR. What exactly should PR do for your startup, and how you should be leveraging PR at all times. Bringing on John now, and I'm going to allow him to introduce herself, and we'll get started. Hi, John.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, 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 good. Good to see you here.
You too, likewise.
I gave a brief introduction. Maybe you can further what exactly you do, who exactly you
Sure.
work with, and kind of what you're seeing out there in the PR field.
Sure, absolutely. And thank you, Herschel, for the invite here. Hello, everyone. My name is John McCartney. I'm the principal at JMac PR. We're a boutique agency that works directly with startups and founders in helping them create more visibility and to build out their thought leadership, which is something that I'll go into during this webinar. But I think when it comes to PR, it's a critical component for any business, especially for startups, because as you all know, as you're building your product, you need to be able to tell the marketplace. And how do you do that? You can either pay for ads, or you can work with journalists in creating stories that will be able to create awareness for you. But also there are certain other nuances in PR that you can also leverage that will help achieve those business building goals that you set forth. So I'm happy to go into it today.
Yeah, John, how exactly would you define PR? Like, what exactly do you do, and how should startups look at it?
So yeah, I think when it comes to PR, I mean, it's going to accomplish a couple of goals. One, it's going to help increase the visibility of your company, which will help encourage more signups, sales, investing. It's also going to help attract attention to your technology platform. It's also going to help increase exposure and build out your thought leadership for the stakeholders and the founders of the startup. And it's also going to help put the company into the overall conversations that are having in the marketplace specific to your startup. One of the great examples that I like to provide to startups as a very minimal effort homework assignment is to come up with a list of these keywords that are relevant to your startup, and to just go to Google and start searching under Google News, and you will start to identify and see these certain keywords that are being picked up in these different links. And then you should also start to track these websites, these media publications, and these writers, because these are the individuals that you will, for your startup, have to engage with to let them know about who you are, what your company is about, and to really make sure that you are on their radar.
Got it. So basically, you have journalists who are looking to create content about startups, about new things, and you should be smart enough to be able to find those journalists and be able to have a list of them and know which ones would be interested in picking up your story and giving you a voice.
Yeah, so, absolutely. I mean, I think, I feel like anyone can do PR. I think what ends up happening is, like, we all get busy. We get pulled into so many different directions. So, I think anyone can do PR. It's all about having a little bit of creativity as far as, seeing what kind of stories are being written. It's also putting the time and effort into identifying some of these platforms, websites that are a good fit for you and for your startup. Which is why most times, they hire a contractor, a freelancer, an agency to help provide that PR support to the startup.
Got it. Got it. And what stage should startups be looking to do PR? Like, should they be doing it at the idea stage, before they have a product, after they have a product, after they get funding? Where have you seen it actually work, or does it not matter?
No, I think, and I'm also a mentor to a couple accelerators, and I advise them to encourage them to start doing that homework assignment that I mentioned, to come up with these keywords, start cataloging all these different writers and websites that are writing about these keywords specific to their startup. And to be able to find their info online and just, hey, I just want to send out a quick note, just introduce myself. I'm the founder of this company. I saw you wrote about this piece. Would love to set up a virtual talk with you, just so that you can start getting on their radar. And you should also look at looking at doing and writing like these, we like to call them bylines, or like these opinion pieces, and getting them published. Many websites, many media websites are always looking for content, and they don't usually charge you to get your article published on their website. They just need something a little bit more high level, that's not going to be self-serving, that's going to provide value and insights to their readership. So, looking at writing your own bylines, if you will, and getting them published is another effective way to help increase your visibility, your awareness, and also will hit on building your own thought leadership. So that I feel like, before you start getting to that Series A round, you should look at ways to start creating and building out your digital footprint online, whether it's through these bylines, whether you can create maybe like a Q&A with a website. There are many websites that will do that, because when you get to that critical point of announcing your big funding round or your big product launch, then you will have a bank of digital footprints for your startup, so that when reporters start really doing their research, they can see like, oh, this company and this executive has been A, B, and C. And then it just makes your pitch much stronger versus like, who is this company? There's nothing about them.
Absolutely. I can't harp on that enough. A digital footprint is crucial for any startup. It makes my job as an investor significantly easier for me to be like, okay, these guys are real. This entrepreneur is real.
Right.
This entrepreneur has a voice. So much of startup pitching and so much of startup success is around storytelling. And that's with customers as well as with investors. It's not just one way. So when you do have a digital footprint, it'll add to brand value. And in the end, most startups, most products should be aiming towards creating brand. And it's pretty clear that PR helps that way. So
it does. Yeah, and I'll just quickly just add that, it definitely helps build that brand. But I think also PR, when you define the brand or create the brand is supposed to be like a person. How does that brand make you feel? When you think of that brand, like what comes to mind? So, through PR, and also PR is part of this bigger marketing picture. So, there are other ways to really create that visibility and engagement and thought leadership. But PR is an important aspect of business.
Absolutely. And I can't harp on it enough how important that digital footprint is for long term. Just think about it. People now, if you have multiple stories, multiple articles, multiple sources telling your story over a period of time, it helps me create a story in my mind of who these guys are. And when your pitch matches that story I have in my head, it makes me that much more inclined to engage with you. So,
and also very quickly, Herschel, I just also want to add that, I think there's a lot of, I've seen this in startup land, analysis paralysis, if you will. It's like, oh, we're not ready to start making, some inroads with PR. And, I always say, no, you need to start getting yourself out there, because what usually happens in startup world is like the product that you're building, tomorrow morning, you'll read on TechCrunch, like another competitor is launching, doing the same exact thing you're doing. And now you're behind the 8 ball and you're now further back in the line. So it's like, you have to think about it in the big picture scheme, like, how important PR is to any business.
Yeah, PR can deter competitors from even starting. You get a story written about yourself on the field you're in, and you have some smart guy sitting somewhere, and he Googles you guys and says, "Oh, these guys must be way ahead of me. I shouldn't even do this." So interesting on that front as well. So curious, John, on a couple of things I want to harp on, because we do have a lot of founders here. Let's talk about expectations when you engage a PR professional, and cost. So first, let's talk about expectations. What can you expect? Like, let's say somebody was going to engage you and your firm. How do I go about it? What should I be expecting? And is each firm different, or is this pretty universal?
Well, I think there's a couple. I mean, you need to always look at, like, are you getting ROI for your investment? So, when it comes to reporting in PR, there are certain metrics that you should always look at. I mean, one is the number of mentions. You should also look at a very important a metric. It's called share of voice. It's sort of looking at your company and comparing it to 3 or 4 other quote unquote competitors, just to see like what the mentions are in the beginning of the engagement, and are you really making meaningful inroads as far as eating into your competitors' media coverage. You should also look at like inbound leads. Is the media and the PR that you're getting, is that translating into like inbound visits? Another important metric that I like to use is, with Google Analytics, is referral traffic. So many times you'll see a media publication write about a story, and then they'll include a link to your startup homepage, which is great because then you can go to Google Analytics, you can see all the different traffics, and then you can see a referral, and then you can see like, oh yeah, that's the story that I got in TechCrunch, and it drove so much traffic to your homepage. So, there's so many different metrics that you should look at for gauging success in PR, but the ones that I mentioned are the top level ones.
So when we do look at ROI, John, do we want it? I mean, is it like directly correlated, or how can I take a bird's eye view on, am I getting a bang for my buck? Is this guy doing his job? Like, what should be my expectation?
Yeah, so I think, number one, this whole notion of like, oh, I'm just gonna hire a PR person and just walk away. You can't do that. Many times I preach the importance, like, you have to really be committed to this journey. You cannot just like hire somebody and just walk away. It doesn't work that way. You need to be engaging with your PR support team, whether it's in-house or an outsider, and sort of just make sure that they are coming up with strategy and new ideas that's going to help continue to sustain and build momentum as you move forward. So, so number one, you need to be engaged. Number two, I think, you just need to obviously look at your, from a resources standpoint, just look at your budget. So, I like to say that for a startup, you don't necessarily need to hire a big agency. Well, one, it's a non-starter because the budget's not there typically. But number two, I think you should look at like determining like, what are your key objectives? Like, is it to start building out your thought leadership, which I think is probably maybe the most cost-effective way to start an engagement, because if you can start getting into a pattern of writing, one byline per month at least, and getting it published on a monthly basis, that's going to start the steps towards building your thought leadership. And then from there, you can look at like just sort of creating a very baseline PR campaign that would include like, okay, we're just going to do media relations. We're going to start getting people and reporters interested in talking to the founders about the product and about the marketplace as a whole, and just to really start that journey. But I think from a resources standpoint, people, if you want to do a full-fledged PR campaign, you're probably looking at between maybe $3,000 to $5,000 on average. However, everything's negotiable. It really also depends on what your key needs are at that time.
Got it. Yeah, and it's one of these things where I think that a lot of startups, it's hard to develop a voice, especially if you're on the product side. So part of the value that we've seen that PR guys can bring to the table is helping you create that voice, which that's huge, because if you're not sure on how to engage the media, talk to somebody. Take this outside, because if you try yourself, either you might run into some blocks there on what exactly do I want my leadership to be in? How do I want to portray my thoughts? And PR professionals can help in that regards. So let's talk about kind of who's been your favorite entrepreneur or startup to work with, and why? Like what did they bring to the table that made your job easier / made the campaign successful?
Yeah, I think so. The startups that I've worked with over my career, the ones that really stand out are the ones who are really engaging, are the ones who walk step in step with me on the process of the things that the team needs to succeed to carry out their PR duties and to meet those objectives. So, there was there was a startup in New York. They were a design agency, sort of like a frog design for folks who are familiar with some of these agencies that create these innovative things. So and basically just started working with this particular startup on some of their schemes and getting some visibility for some of their campaigns and some of the work that they've been doing, and also helping to have their customers and their clients be able to validate the work that this particular startup was doing, getting them in, like so many, media features like Business Insider, Bloomberg, Fast Company, The Verge, CNET, you name it. It just started happening because they had a great story to tell. It was innovating. It was like new. And then eventually that startup was acquired down the road. And I think because of the PR, what it helps is create this visibility. Once you start getting to that critical mass, then people start looking, investors start looking. They're like, oh, maybe this is a company we should look at acquiring or, bringing into the fold. So that's one example. There's a San Francisco ad tech company that was eventually bought out by Facebook, and their in-house contact was, he knew exactly what we needed to succeed, and it just basically helped the overall product. So those are the ones that really stand out. And obviously there are companies that I've worked with who, I get it, people are busy, but when you take a long time to review a press release draft, or you take a long time to get back to your team about like, oh, I want to, comment on that story that broke 2 weeks ago. It's like, what are you doing? It's like the window closed. You have to really be committed to making this work, because if you can't commit yourself to making this work, then you really should invest in PR.
Yeah, makes sense. So you have to move quick. News cycles move so fast. So it's one of the things when, me personally, if somebody messages me and says, hey, do you want a quote in here? It's like, I have to answer that within a few hours. If I don't, someone else is going to get the quote, and I've missed that opportunity to get my name featured and build that digital footprint. So you have to be dedicated. I totally agree. And part of why, if you end up paying for it, you should be dedicated. Otherwise you're throwing money away. So
and I would go back to like, you're paying, for this support, whether it's in-house or outside, because you yourself can't do it. And I mentioned this in the beginning, anyone can do this on their own, but how many hours in a day do we have? I mean, think of it as an investment. If you're really serious about increasing your visibility, building your thought leadership, it's a very impactful part of business that will yield so many benefits.
Got it. So interesting here. So, it's one of these things where it not only does PR help you build that thought leadership, it seems like it's also going to help you win over customers and grow your business. This isn't just one thing that it does for you. That this digital footprint goes beyond a singular source. It's a revenue source. It's a branding source. It's a future acquisition source. It's a future investment source. So, I mean, there's tons of value that this provides. And honestly, it's anything. The reality is founders should be smart. Like founders should know that anybody that's going to do business with them or thinking about engaging, they're going to look them up. They're going to see, hey, what's out there? Who do I, and then they're going to look at your competition, and then they're going to do the same thing. So if you have more things about you, it brings legitimacy to what you're doing in terms of perception. And everything's about perception. That's how you win deals. That's how you win investments. So it's crucial, right? So back to stage, I think that's kind of the hard part for a lot of entrepreneurs to kind of grasp. Is it ever too early to start building thought leadership? And what are some suggestions you can give to very early stage entrepreneurs in terms of how to go about and building that digital footprint?
Yeah, I don't think it's too early. I think when it comes to building your thought leadership platform, I think you can effectively do it by going online, coming up with those keywords, and then just sort of seeing like what are the target media publications that really will move the needle for your startup, and just to see like, do they have a section for guest writers? Do they have a section for like outside opinions? And start cataloging all these different media publications and where, you can potentially, submit a byline. Again, most of these publications, they want content, they need content. I myself recognize that value, and I'm starting to, do more on that front, because again, creating that digital footprint, it takes, not a whole lot of time, but I think more importantly, you just got to be committed to doing that. So I think starting with building out these lists that have all these publications for where you can submit a byline is going to be crucial. But also just looking at, what are the different associations that matter to your company. I'm sure right now, because of COVID, and you've probably seen this too, there's so many, events and programming happening every week, whether it's a Zoom webinar, maybe you should contact those organizers. Hey, I'd love to create a new panel discussion on X. And, happy to help round out this panel discussion with other people. Again, you just need to hustle and just, start finding these opportunities to really help build your thought leadership.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in terms of actually sharing publications and kind of going about it, what are your favorite sources? I mean, do you spend a lot of your time on LinkedIn? Are you a Twitter guy? Like, where are you seeing social media play a role in PR?
I mean, I think, so social media and PR, they're all in the same marketing umbrella. And, for me, I mean, I usually have my go-to sources. Well, one, I mean, I have my TweetDeck open. So it's basically like, I guess, the modern day RSS reader. So it's just seeing like all these different, like, stories coming in. So there's that. Herschel, you and I, we met through the Jason Calacanis Slack community, the This Week in Startups. So I also look at that as a source for finding some new content. But yeah, like my go-to ones like Wall Street Journal, New York Times, TechCrunch, Business Insider.
How do you rank them? Like, what does it mean to get published in TechCrunch? What does that mean to get published in
Well,
the New York Times? Where do you kind of place value in these for startups?
it really depends. I mean, I think, well, in startup world, obviously TechCrunch is like, the holy grail. I mean, you gotta, get that. So that, should always be, on the target, but it really depends on the product. It's like, for example, I'm working with a startup that is launching a new talent marketplace for, marketers. So I'm looking at some of these journalists who are covering that topic, but also some of these media outlets like Quartz has a really good workplace section. So it depends on your platform, depends on your product. But I think in startup world, it's TechCrunch, and just as the main go-to sort of media outlet.
Yeah, no, that's I agree. So when we're looking at kind of it's honestly it's any digital footprint. People should be able to Google your company
Yeah.
and be able to see stuff written about it. And when you have that, it makes a difference, and that should be the goal.
And Herschel, I also want to stress the point. There are a bazillion number of outlets out there. You don't necessarily, TechCrunch is not the end all be all. I mean, there are websites out there that maybe they have a 500 unique visitors per month. Who cares? In the beginning stages, start building that digital footprint. These websites, they want content. So you can approach these, I hate to use the term, but there's the quote unquote low hanging fruit, but it's like reaching out to their editor on this website. Hey, I like the stuff that you're covering and posting. Would you be interested in doing a Q&A for your website? Awesome. Sure. Easy.
Yeah, no, you're smart, and I talk about the shameless entrepreneur often. You got to be shameless, and part of PR is being shameless. You may be shy, get over the hump, just because it'll pay dividends in the future.
Yep.
So I think that there's a lot of really meaty content. Part of what I really grasp, or what I really like that you said, is kind of that initial exercise. Go to Google News, type in the keywords, figure out who's writing about what you're doing, and then contact them. It's a soft contact just to build a relationship.
Yeah.
Having a hard time finding your voice, contact John. He'll help you. He'll help you kind of, professionals do help with kind of creating what your aura should be digitally. And if you're having a hard time conceptualizing that, these guys can provide value. understand that it's a long-term play. It's not something like,
Yeah.
let's just do PR this month. I think it kind of spreads across the time, and PR doesn't just have to be about good news. It does not have to be like, we raised the seed round, let's get PR. It can be about what you're building, what's exciting. There's so many different stories that can come out.
Yep.
Get your in them. Get your voice heard.
And then, and also it's like, the thought leadership stuff. It's like, if you're about to do a product launch, shouldn't you start getting your bylines published about the topic in advance? Because wouldn't that help set the stage so that when you're ready to do a product launch, if I'm a journalist, I'm like, oh, what is this company? Let me Google them. Oh, the CEO wrote about this topic in A, B, and C. Oh, pretty insightful stuff. Okay, this person gets it. It just makes it stronger. So.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people would be surprised at how well journalists can actually tell your story. They know what they're doing, and everything that they write has to be compelling. So if you're in a compelling article, if you have a compelling quote, this works. We have one question down here. Should we be hiring agencies to just write and create content?
No. I mean, you can hire copywriters, to say, hey, can you write this byline for me, or website copy. You don't need to hire a PR agency for that. You can just hire, a freelancer, a contractor, to handle that stuff.
Super. I think there's a lot to unpack here. I do believe that PR can provide value across the board at multiple times. So, I really do appreciate you sharing your knowledge here. I do encourage anybody listening, anybody that finds value here, to connect with John. He knows his stuff. And then, keep hustling, keep communicating, keep building that voice, keep building that brand, and appreciate it. And so this will be the end of it, and we'll talk. See ya.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone. Be safe.